Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ. It's JJ Meets World, and right now the world is meeting Black Widow in her first ever solo film. Scarlett Johansson stars as the titular assassin, and boy, oh boy, Tucker and I have a great time breaking that down, as well as movie snacks. This is definitely a movie-centered episode, and spoilers galore. If you have not seen Black Widow yet, just know we do talk about some pivotal plot points, but I don't think we've done anything that's going to really ruin the movie for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
So I told Tucker last night that I wanted to talk about one subject, but that was actually a red herring to make sure that he wasn't thinking about this leading up to directly when we talked.
I wondered. I was like, what anniversaries?
Yeah, right. Like why is he talking about? So what I want to talk about is what Tucker originally had slated for today, which is we're going to talk about the movie Black Widow.
And you thought I would be unprepared by you saying, "Hey, Tucker, let's talk about."
No,
death.
I just didn't want you sitting there thinking about it. You know, like be like, oh, what am I going to say on this podcast about it?
Oh, I see.
I wanted to be able to have this moment where, you know, like where I kind of like surprised you.
Got it.
Because here's the deal: I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed Black Widow.
Did you expect not to enjoy it?
Here's the thing. Here's the problem. So for those of you who are maybe semi-familiar with the Marvel Universe, this movie doesn't really mean anything with what we know leading up to it. Mm-hmm. Because we already know what happens in Natasha Romanoff's story. This movie takes place during the lead up. The Infinity War hasn't even begun yet.
This pretty much picks up right after Civil War ends.
No, so that's not even true. This takes place inside the framework of Civil War.
No, it's after Civil War.
Nope, it's not, because at the end of Civil War during the Stinger is when they get everyone off the raft.
Yep. So it's between the very end and then the Easter egg, because the last thing that Natasha does in Civil War is she has that argument with Tony where she says, you better watch your back, and then she leaves. And then the very first thing that William Hurt says when he shows up in Black Widow is, all right, we're after Natasha. She assaulted the king of Wakanda, and she's like just beginning her getting on the run. And then when she talks to her guys, she's like, well, listen, Captain America is on the run right now, as am I. And so like basically it's the very end of Civil War, between the very ending of it and the Easter egg in Civil War. You're right. It takes place right in that little thing.
Which to me is just, that's one of the things that Marvel can do that other studios have never really cracked the nut on.
Sure. Right.
Is trying to figure out like, well, listen, we technically could have a story that takes place during this, what it would essentially would be like from the last frame of the full length film, and then the stinger we include at the end.
Yeah, you literally could go back and finish Civil War and watch this and feel like you're almost watching part of the same movie, because it's inside of all of that. And of course, it dovetails into when we next see her in Infinity War.
Including with the hairstyle.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, gosh, is this just a money grab? Are they just trying to like show us one more thing with this character? And like Natasha Romanoff is a fun character, but she's not a superhero. She's a super spy. She's a super assassin, but she's not, she's not a god. She has never been, given a superhuman ability to do anything. And boy, was I wrong to have any kind of misgivings about this not being a high quality film. I want to praise it for a couple things right off the bat. Number one, I think that the story, it fits. I didn't have any qualms with the villain, with the timeline. It was good. It was really good, and in fact, it actually will tie into stuff that we're seeing now, in the television series and in future movies, which I thought was good. The biggest thing is, we all know how much I dislike the movie Midsommar. And I do. I think that movie is just awful. I think I don't understand why so many people were taken in by it. And the lead actress in Midsommar is Florence, and I don't know, is it, how you say her last name? It's a Czech name, I think.
I asked this question actually yesterday and was told it was Pugh, but I don't know if that's true or not.
So Florence.
Let's just say Florence.
So I was like, well, she's going to have to win me over because I don't like her. I don't like her at all because I hated the movie Midsommar so much. And within 6 minutes of screen time, she actually became my favorite character in this whole movie.
Mm-hmm. She steals every scene she's in.
She does. And they wrote really well for her, and they allowed her to do some stuff. There is one weird shot at the end of the movie where I was like, why are we focusing on her crotch? That's a weird moment for me. But beyond that, she was one of my favorite parts of the movie, which is really a compliment because David Harbour does an amazing job in this movie and adds some wonderful comic relief to it. Start to finish, I think Black Widow is a good it's a good test for what future Marvel movies could be for these little one-offs.
Right. And I think there's also a really interesting experiment going on right now in the industry in general. And you and I think can speak to this from two vantage points for this particular movie, where a movie is released in theaters, but at the same time, it's also available for premium subscribers if you pay $30 on Disney Plus to watch it on streaming, which is what I did. You went to the movie theater, right? Yep. And so I'm really interested. I know you've been to the theater a couple times, I believe, before Black Widow, right? With the return to theaters. So, what is going to a theater been like for you? It was my initial intention to see Black Widow on the big screen. I ended up just deciding, I feel like staying home. I'm going to go this route. And because I'm such a Marvel super fan, I'm going to want to watch this a couple of times anyway. So I'll gladly pay the $30 for multiple viewings at home. But what's Return to the Theaters like? And are you happy you saw it on the big screen?
I really am. So one of the reasons that my vaccination was such a priority was so I could go to movies. And there is something about the communal aspect of laughing together, crying together, screaming together that I miss from seeing movies. This is what I liked about this experience. This is the first time that it's been fully open, 100% capacity. So I was in a packed theater.
Nice.
And we've changed the way we do things in movie theaters for the better. So now everything is contactless if you want it. So you can order your tickets, choose your seats in advance, walk in and have already placed an order for the popcorn and soda and candy you want. And so you just walk up to an area and I'm JJ, and they hand you your stuff. And it has changed the way people go to movies. So something that drives me nuts is in our neck of the woods, Tucker, when a movie starts at 7, most people get there at 6:59.
Right.
And luckily they don't do things like hold movies or anything like that. But it is annoying because so many folks walk in and they think to themselves, I don't have to worry about this because it's no big deal. It's only the previews. There's 15 minutes of previews. Well, if I'm constantly having to get up for people who, need to get in further in my row and stuff like that, it just drives me crazy. But now the fact that you can get all that stuff instantly is so much better.
Right.
So that, and then while I was walking I had almost drank half my soda by the time like the movie was about to start. So the trailers, they hadn't started or anything like that. And so I was like, I'm going to go fill up my cup before everything gets going, and walking and looking at the full theater.
You just woke up. What's with all these yawns, JJ?
I'm just yawning. I'm just a yawny guy today.
You are a yawny guy.
I turn to the crowd and I go, "Yay, movies!" And there's a big cheer. And I love that. I love the fact of the like been in a theater with a bunch of strangers watching a movie on opening night. We went on Thursday night and it felt great. It felt really, really good. Now, that being said, I've also seen some movies in the theaters that I'm like, oh, I probably would have enjoyed this more in my home. But what are you going to do? This is probably like the sixth or seventh movie I've been to since theaters reopened. But this movie feels like going to a movie pre-pandemic. Okay,
good. Awesome. So
let me ask you this. So your home experience.
Yeah, well, I do like going to see movies in the theater, but overall, I prefer a more curated experience that I'm in control of, including I've had so many bad experiences with other people in theaters with cell phones or talking or bringing their kids who are crying or all the things. And it's incredibly expensive. If I'm going to go there, buy a ticket, get the food that's there, etc. And still sit through a lot of ads and stuff. So there's a lot to the theater experience that detracts for me. I really enjoyed, with the exception of how uncomfortable the seats were for the longest time, the movie going experience at the Fargo Theater, because you show up, you get some popcorn, there might be a trailer or two, but then you're in the movie and that's it, right? It's real cut and dry, really inexpensive. And so the theater experience has just changed so much. And then on top of it, there are so few things coming out that make me feel like, oh, I really need to see this in the theater. Now, the exception typically for me are Marvel movies or superhero movies in general, where there's a big fan base that I'm a part of, and we've all been anticipating it and thinking about it and wanting to do it, wanting to go, watching in both Infinity War and Endgame with a huge crowd was an incredibly satisfying experience. So I'm sure I would have loved watching this movie with a crowd. But I just didn't want to go anywhere. I just felt like I wanted to stay at home. And some of the pros, you had said that you had finished your half of your soda at least before the movie had even started, right?
Yep.
So that's something that I would also do. I'm notorious for getting sodas and snacks at movies and then basically being done with them before the movie has even started. And so oftentimes that means that I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the movie. And I don't want to do that in a Marvel film where I might miss a key plot point or some kind of development or a reveal. We won't spoil it here, but imagine if I had not been there for the reveal of Taskmaster's identity. Like, that would have upset me greatly if I had to get up and go to the bathroom during that. So typically for Marvel movies, I not only won't get any snacks or anything at the movie theater, I will try to not eat or drink anything prior and make sure I've gone to the bathroom well ahead of time. So there's no chance my viewing is going to be interrupted by that. But then I do miss, it would be nice to have some Raisinets right now and a Pepsi. I'd really dig that. So it's nice that at home, I can pause that at any time. I was talking with Scott Horvick about this yesterday. He really enjoys the fact that he can turn on closed captions so he can actually understand everything that's being said. My mom is actually the same way. I'm surprised to find how many people love watching, English speaking films with subtitles because it's just easier for them to follow along everything being said.
Yeah,
so
I think my wife loves that, right? So Jill loves to put on closed captioning, especially when we watch something like Peaky Blinders or something where, they have a thick brogue to their accent.
Right. Even I was going to say, even I think Greg Carlson, I think he still maybe does watch stuff with subtitles on now as well, which actually really surprises me. I'll use them more as a tool of, wait, what did that person say? I'm having trouble catching it. I might go back and replay that scene quickly with subtitles on. Oh, that's how they said it. Okay. But even sometimes I'll notice if I'm watching something with subtitles, or I should say closed captions, really, that the closed captions don't actually match up to what's being said. in some nuanced way. So I definitely don't like to do that. But you're saying Jill loves to do it, huh?
Jill loves to do it, especially because, if you can't understand something because it's so thick in the accent that she needs to be able to grasp it. Now, I'm going to say this. I think that being able to pause a movie that you're seeing for the first time that was made for a theatrical experience actually takes away from it. I totally understand the idea that you got to go to the bathroom and you don't want to miss anything. And so then you can pause it. But, the director didn't intend for you to pause that movie. There's a specific flow that was chosen by a director and an editor. And so to me, that is one of the things where, take my mom. My mom hated going to movies for the same reason, Tucker. Well, you gotta go to the movie and then you come back and you're like, well, what's going on? Whereas at home, she could pause and it's no big deal. But it takes a lot to put yourself right back into that exact moment. And maybe maybe you've got a super skill and you're great at getting right back into it. But to me, I find that there are more distractions in my home than there are at a movie theater if I time it right. And I'm also not above tapping someone on the shoulder and saying hey, could you please not use your cell phone anymore? Because then then I've got to get back into the movie myself, and nobody likes that. Maybe what we should be talking about is there should be a law against distractions when it comes to movies. And twice in my life, Jill thought I was going to get into a parking lot fight with somebody. One time we were seeing the movie Hancock with Will Ferrell or with Will Smith, excuse me. And
was that what the fight was over? Was that what the fight was over? You were like, it's Will Ferrell and it's Will Smith.
Yeah, I know. I confuse them all the time, right? They're comedic geniuses. What? And so the guy in front of me was using his phone. And finally I leaned forward and I'm like, hey, could you stop using your phone? He's like, hey, could you stop talking during the movie? And I was like, if you pull that phone out one more time, and he goes, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'll see you in the parking lot. And his girlfriend goes, Todd, Jesus, just put the phone away. So he puts the phone away. And immediately when the movie's done, he turns around to me and he stands up, and he probably stands 5'5". And then I stand up and he sees what I am. And he fucking bolts out of that theater. He needs to get out of there ASAP because he does not want to come fist to fist with me. Now, given I would have lost that fight, it doesn't matter if I got some height and pounds on that dude. I just am not a very,
I feel like you would have handled
guy.
yourself fine, actually. I feel like you would have just held him down or something.
One time I did boxing in my friend Jared's basement. Essentially he had some boxing mitts and people would box just, around his couch and junk like that. And I invented a move called the windmill where I spin around really quick. And,
you invented that.
Yeah. And I tried to punch people while I was doing that. Also,
pretty sure that's a Zangief move from Street Fighter 2.
Is it? I mean, it's a good move. It's a really good move. So to me, it's nah, it probably wouldn't have happened. But I needed the theatrical experience for Black Widow. I needed it.
I think you could argue that the director also doesn't intend you to get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of their movie.
Yeah.
So really to support the vision of the director, you need to hold your pee-pee, even if the film is 2.5 hours long.
So when a movie hits 3 hours long, I think that they actually have gotten to the point of where they realize that is an unrealistic hope.
Yeah.
Because, and don't get me wrong, movie theaters don't want you to come in and be like, no, I'm perfectly hydrated. Thank you very much. They want you to buy popcorn and pop and candy and all that kind of good stuff. And so to me, when you find out a movie's going to be that long, they're really, there's an app called, what's it called? It's called P something. It's hold on. I've got it on my phone.
PayPal?
No, it's not PayPal. Come on, man.
Oh yeah,
It's called Run P, and it's one word, Run P. And so if you go into a movie, it'll tell you the minute marker in the movie where you should go pee because nothing important or plot specific is going to happen. It is user focused and driven. So if you are, Phil Goodell uses this app all the time.
Right. Okay. So does it, hold on. Does it tell you in the moment, hey, notify you right now, go pee right now?
It does not. Good. It just gives you like a minute mark at the beginning. So for example, let's see what they say for this. Okay.
Because I was thinking like, if you wouldn't want it to notify you because that way it's going to be a distraction. But I would also think if I'm reading it ahead of time and it says when the cop lifts up the trash can lid, that's the moment. And it's like, spoilers, man. I just read a spoiler for the movie.
Yep. And you don't want to do that, right? Okay.
You don't want to do that.
Okay, here we go. So you can set a timer on it if you really want. Okay. There's a people's poll thing here that said so.
So it's like aggregate, like people report when they think you should do it.
Yeah. And then it also gives you a brief synopsis of what it is at that minute marker. So if you do go pee, you can actually see like, oh, okay, so a new character is introduced, but only has a few scenes and isn't important to the plot.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so these little things. And so they recommend like, pee time. There's 3 quality pee times in the movie Black Widow. And so
what do they say? I want to know what they think are pee-worthy times of Black Widow.
Okay, so the first one is at the 21-minute, 10-second mark. And it says on the screen, you see Norway. We're introduced to a new character, but he only has a few scenes and is important to the plot. So they think it's all right to get away with not seeing the character who provides her with all of her stuff.
I see. Okay.
Gotcha. We're both trained killers, except I'm not on the cover of a magazine. This is one long conversation between Natasha and Yelena. There's a little exposition that's easy to summarize. So the scene that takes place in the like little bodega.
Oh, sure. But that's such a great scene. I mean,
it is a great scene, but you don't really need it to watch the rest of the movie. You know,
it's not in the vision of the director, JJ.
I agree. Listen, I hold my piss. I hold it. I will sit there and squirm.
Is that the episode title? I hold my piss.
Yeah, there you go, right?
I don't know what iTunes will think about that one.
Okay, and so the third one, the 3 of 3, is at the 1 minute and 23 second mark, and you'll have 3 minutes and 50 seconds. And then about this pee time, as soon as a bright light appear outside the house while Alexa is so this is when they're being captured.
Okay.
You know,
got it. Right.
And then this person says, this may seem like a bad time to leave the theater, but the next 4 minutes are really just a transition scene to the new location. And then it also tells you if there's things at the end of the credits.
Right.
Oh, yeah. There's a good amount of this. Yeah. And the P times in this one are by the CEO and founder of the app Run P.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's one of the issues, right? So I know people who go and take phone calls and will come in and they've missed 12 minutes of the movie. And then let's say the movie's 90 minutes long and you miss 12 minutes because you went out to take a phone call. And then you say, well, I didn't like the movie. I would say you didn't watch the movie.
Right.
You know, it's one thing if you just decide to turn it off. It's another if you think you are allowed to say I've had the full experience when you haven't had the full experience. Maybe during those 12 minutes, you would have become immediately engaged in a character. You know, one of the characters says, like, when I was a kid, I fell down a pit and you fell down a pit yourself. And so, oh, my God, I can relate now.
We've talked about this before, I think. Have you ever actually walked out of a movie and not finished it?
Yeah, only one.
What was it?
Malibu's Most Wanted.
Okay. Why?
It was horrible.
I mean, because that's a big thing for me because you have like the stomach lining for movies that I could never even dream of. You know, you're someone who's like, no, I'm going to sit through this. I'm going to watch this whole thing because it's a passion of yours and it's something that feeds you. Like, but there was one movie that was just so bad you just couldn't even take it. Have you ever finished that movie?
Nope. I've never even gone back. So Malibu's Most Wanted is a Jamie Kennedy movie where he plays someone who's like entrenched in black culture, essentially. And he's a white guy from Malibu. And so someone hires two black gentlemen to pretend they're thugs to give him what the real thug experience is like. And one of them's Anthony Anderson, and I think the other one might be Taye Diggs. And it is horrifically bad. It's also incredibly racist, in my opinion. Like, what they're doing here is just way out of line. And it's not funny. It's so cringeworthy that every time Jamie Kennedy's on screen, you think, is this it? Is he done? Like, I hope they kill his character. I hope he dies. Why couldn't he get like a staph infection or something like that? And I would rather watch him fight for his life in the hospital.
How far into the movie did you get, like minute wise?
We were probably there 35, 40 minutes. And I walked out with a group of people that was 6 or 7 people thick.
Oh, so it wasn't just you that everyone was like, to hell with this. Let's go to Perkins.
And what was really great is we were there with David Brunsvold, and he turned to the audience while the movie is still playing. He goes, "How can you people still watch this?" And here's something else I didn't walk out of from I think that same summer. The movie Stealth, which is about a plane that has AI.
Yeah.
And that movie is horrible. I sat through the whole thing.
That movie was getting routinely heckled in the trailers because it was attached to other movies. And I remember like someone had done one kind of heckle that then other people were copying. It was specifically to Stealth. I'm trying to remember exactly what someone said, but it was just something where like, the movie would like the trailer would end and then someone would just go like boo or something. I can't remember what it was, but Stealth was hated from the get-go, as was, I believe, Battleship.
Yep. And actually one of our previous guests was in the movie Battleship. Did you know that?
Excuse me?
Yeah. Mark J. Lindquist was in the movie Battleship.
You're kidding me.
No.
Future potential congressman. Mark J. Lindquist. Yeah, I guess Pete, I don't know if anyone's heard this recent. I mean, you probably have if you know him, but recent guest Mark Lindquist has now announced his intention to run for office in Minnesota, right? What is he running for specifically?
I think it's Congressional District 7.
Okay.
So yeah, Mark J. Lindquist, who was in the military himself, was in the movie Battleship.
No way. What did he do in that movie?
He's listed as JPJ Sailor. I don't, to be honest, like since I've met Mark, I haven't been able to go back and watch Battleship. So I don't know if you can clearly see him or anything like that.
How amazing would it be to do a commentary track for Battleship with like a quote unquote official from one of the actors in the film?
Oh well, let's get on it. We'll get some of his precious time and see if he wants to.
I bet that would be great for his campaign. You know, I mean, Ronald Reagan was an actor who got very far with his political career.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe, like what I'd like to have him be like, okay, did you have any scenes with Liam Neeson? No. Did you have any scenes with Alexander Skarsgård? No. What about Rihanna? No. Peter McNichol? No. Jesse Plemons? No.
Wait, how do you know the cast for Battleship?
I just know the people who are in Battleship.
That's a pretty impressive. I had no idea Liam Neeson and Rihanna were in Battleship.
Oh, yeah. Rihanna, in fact, Rihanna was a big part of the trailer. Like she's at like a big like Gatling gun firing it off.
Huh.
Yeah, it's funny when there's people who could go on to do much better things.
Right.
And they all end up in a crap movie. In fact, I was just looking at the cast list recently for Big Mama's House 2. And realized like, wow, there's a lot, like whoever cast this movie did a great job casting it because these people all went on to do bigger and better things.
Right. So back to Black Widow, if I may, for a moment. So this is definitely some spoilers territory we're going to get into here now.
Yeah, so spoilers.
Just throw this out there, go watch the movie. But I don't think we've really spoiled much of anything yet. That wouldn't have already been obvious in the trailer was going to happen since we all knew this was connective tissue as a film.
Let me throw a spoiler, let me throw a non-spoiler spoiler out there, okay? And I know what you're saying, like that's a double negative. So we all know what happens to Natasha Romanoff's character in Endgame, which, by the way, if you haven't seen Endgame at this point, like, what are you waiting for?
Right.
So anything that happens in this movie to her character specifically, to me, is like a moot point. Right. So like there's a scene where she's being attacked and it looks like she's going to die and, you know, she's able to overcome or someone saves her. And I think like, well, there's no emotional core for me to this because I already know what happens to her. And I think that's one of the risks you run with like a prequel series with a character you already have established in another movie that takes place after the events of that film. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So
sure.
So what I think they did a great job with in Black Widow is making me care for these other characters that you don't know what's going to happen to them because you've never seen them after the events of this movie.
Right. And they're clearly being set up for future things. And that's kind of part of the spoiler territory I wanted to get into, because the sort of the after post credits scene is the second appearance of Juliette Lewis-Dreyfus in the MCU series playing Lady Viper. And I think what's really interesting, so she's talking to Florence Pugh, or I'm sorry, Florence, because I don't know if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, who is visiting Natasha's grave and is offering her work of some kind. And there's a fan theory out there right now that actually makes a lot of sense to me, that with that scene, plus her giving U.S. agent his new getup in Falcon Winter Soldier, plus now that we've seen that Abomination is still around because he appears in the Shang-Chi trailer, there's a theory that Lady Viper is basically building a Dark Avengers team, because she basically has a version of a Black Widow, a version of a Captain America, and there's a parallel to Hulk who's out there right now. So it could be something that there might be like a Dark Avengers team getting pieced together slow but sure, that we're going to have some sort of a series or movie with in the future, which could be pretty flippin' cool.
Yeah, I would love to see something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the MCU's answer to the Suicide Squad, right?
I think so. I believe so. So one thing that I really have to kind of specify with my Marvel fandom is my locked in knowledge base of Marvel characters sort of ends around the end of the 90s. That's when I sort of stopped routinely paying attention to storylines and the different titles that came out, and Dark Avengers as a concept hadn't come out yet and didn't come out until well after that. So even the style of Dark Avengers, if it's like kind of like a Suicide Squad or if it's something else entirely, I'm actually not quite sure. But there's no question that if James Gunn's version of Suicide Squad takes off, it lays the groundwork for movies about anti-heroes, groups of anti-heroes getting together, if not just outright villains. So that could be really interesting to see, especially because Warner Brothers is already doing spin-offs off of Gunn's Suicide Squad.
And let's face it, Black Widow kind of is the anti-hero, right? Because
sure,
she's wiping clean the red in her ledger. She prior to the events of Iron Man 2, where her character is introduced in kind of a MacGuffin and then said like, oh, this is, Natasha Romanoff and she works with S.H.I.E.L.D. She was an assassin, and it sounds like she's killed a good number of people. Very much like a honeypot type situation, I think. And this is one of those movies where I could tell that someone went back and rewatched a bunch of the other Avengers movies when writing this movie to be like, okay, yeah. So this is how they wrote her in this, and this is how they did, this thing for her here. The way she kind of, the way she plays like a little verbal jujitsu to get people to admit and talk about things that they don't like. Essentially, they monologue, right? They're like all good villains do. Speaking of that, boy, the one thing I will say about Black Widow is, why do they keep giving Ray Winstone jobs? He just is not a very good actor or villain.
What are you talking about?
Puke.
That's definitely a you and only you thinks that.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because tell me, okay, so he plays essentially the gentleman who has been kidnapping girls for decades and forcing them to become these super spies. We find out in Black Widow that he's now using some kind of a mind control chemical for them. And he can make them do whatever they want. He seems a kind of a little bit of a ripoff right now with this thing of, I want to say Killjoy, but that's not his name.
Killmonger?
No, not Killmonger. The one from Jessica Jones.
Oh,
Mr. Purple or whatever.
Yeah, I forget his name. Yep.
So it's like, oh, whatever I say, you have to do. You don't have any choice anymore in what you do. But what you think he was great? I was like, I knew much better guys who could chew up the scenery than he does. And then I went back and I'm like, what? Has he ever done something that really impressed me? And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He was in that crappy Indiana Jones 4th outing. And that's probably why. And then he was in Beowulf which became a forgettable movie. And like, just Ray Winstone, just stop casting him. Like, they're much better people to do that.
Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to disagree because I think he's awesome. Rakoff, I think the first mention of his character that we get is from the first Avengers film, when Loki is saying to Natasha all the things that Hawkeye told him about her, and he says Rakoff's daughter, and so that's the first time I believe we even get that mention. And so it's always been a mystery as to who this Rakoff was. And no, I mean, as the big bad kind of behind the curtain, if I don't see him as a ripoff necessarily of the Purple Man, but there's certainly, with his program, is very similar to the Winter Soldier program, where he's got a bunch of soldiers under his employ and he uses them to topple governments or control the world in some way. So if he's certainly just a stock superhero villain character for sure, but I have no problem with Ray Winstone's performance of it.
His performance was mainly his glasses.
Okay.
I mean, let's be honest.
No, I am being honest, and I disagree. But I don't think he's not the most important part of this movie. I think the most important part of this movie is Florence, because she not only does she steal every scene she's in, but she makes us go, okay, now that ScarJo has left, I'm totally willing to follow this person as a widow or someone who's going to forge her own destiny or her own character. And she's directly ripping into Widow for all sorts of things that the fans love about Widow, like the posing, all of ScarJo's awesome superhero posing that she does, which is a great target for Florence to go after. I'm blanking on. I'm going to learn her character's name. I keep calling her Florence because that's how I know her.
Yelena.
Okay, Yelena. Okay. But then also their sort of surrogate fake parents are so fascinating to me. I loved his fascination with Captain America and assuming that the two of them were just naturally enemies, even though they never crossed paths once in the MCU.
Right. They set up this character named the Red Guardian, who essentially is Russia's answer to Captain America, a super soldier. So he's been given super strength. But I mean, kind of in the way that Russia really is, like, it's just not as good as the United States. Like, it just doesn't hit the mark. And what's interesting to me is, it brings up the idea that there were, and they talk about it at one point that, you think that such and such was the only person, trying to crack the serum. And the fact that, probably a lot of countries were working on a super soldier sort of serum around the same time that Captain America was created. And certainly afterwards, once, the world finds out that, we injected this guy with some stuff and now he's amazing.
The super soldier serum effectively is sort of an analog for the nuclear arms race. And that largely, too, because Marvel superheroes, primarily the source of their powers, with the exception of, say, Thor, primarily the source of their powers was some form of radiation scientific experiment. Because at the time, like in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when these characters were first getting created, that was sort of the big anxiety, right? Was nuclear testing and radiation testing. So the Hulk, it was gamma radiation that caused him, and Spider-Man, it was a gamma radiated spider bite that caused him, and obviously Captain America was the super soldier serum, which was basically an arms race going on during World War II. Part of that story is the Germans had a secret agent in the room when they did the first demonstration who then kills the doctor, and Skull is trying to do it. So yeah, there's direct parallels in Marvel Comics to sort of the scientific revolution of the 20th century and all the anxieties that came about because of that, specifically where a lot of DC superheroes were more aliens from other planets or billionaires or gods that kind of gave them their intro. Even someone like Tony Stark, who is a billionaire, and that's part of how he's able to do what he's able to do, but it's through his scientific and technical prowess that he's able to become a superhero. Doctor Strange, of course, is a doctor. And so that's largely where Marvel superheroes seem to get their powers from, is from science experiments that are also parallel to the anxieties that are written about at the time.
I would agree that to me, we're looking for these heroes that don't necessarily seem like, oh, well, they just didn't die, right? Like they should have died. Right. In this horrible scientific experiment, then they still lived. That's maybe one of the reasons why I like Black Widow the way I do, because she is just, she bleeds, right? Mm-hmm. And in fact, at one moment, in this movie, she takes off like a coat, and you see all these bruises and stuff on her, and you're like, oh yeah, these are people. Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, it also shows like one of the things that I think we miss in some of these superhero movies, which there's one scene, and it's brief. You get maybe like 15 seconds of it, and it's her just sitting and watching TV and eating cereal.
Yeah, I love it. I love those like slice of life moments where you just get to see the heroes kind of hanging out,
right?
And the fact that Natasha has James Bond lines memorized as a super spy is fantastic.
Also, what a coup for them to be able to negotiate the use of that.
Right. I definitely feel like Disney probably has the bankroll to make almost anything happen. I'm trying to remember, was it Dr. No? I'm trying to remember which Bond she's watching.
Yeah, I'm 99.9% sure it's Dr. No.
So okay, so one of the benefits, obviously, of being able to pause movies and all that, rewind, is go back and try to see the things that you missed. And I agree with you, JJ. There's definitely something to be said about the experience of just sitting down and just taking something through the whole way. But then once you've done that, following up with repeat watchings where you do go through, and Marvel is, acutely aware of the fan base going frame by frame through scenes, looking for things that they want to find that fleshes out the world or hints at other things, which is why, YouTube channels like New Rock Stars are huge for when shows like Loki are coming out. It takes a day or two and they'll do all right, 40 things you missed in the last episode of Loki. And so I want to go back and do that with Black Widow and take like a deep dive look, because the first time I watched through it, I just watched through it. I didn't. I paused it once to use the bathroom, but other than that, I wasn't going back to review things over and over again. But I want to know what is in there hidden that could be more of a hint of things to come, because it's so flippin' cool how Feige and the team at Marvel have things so meticulously planned out years ahead of time. So they know about all these twists and turns that their universe is going to be taking. And they do such a good job of obfuscating that from us that I'm constantly left guessing, even though I see so many things on the internet that could be potential spoilers or rumors of spoilers. So I want to go back. I wonder if that particular James Bond, Dr. No, has anything parallel with this show.
I want to stop you. It is not Dr. No. It is Moonraker. It's Roger Moore's Moonraker, which is one of those did they jump the shark with the Bond series?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So which I remember loving as a kid. It's Roger Moore, right?
Yep. Roger Moore.
And doesn't Jaws get a girlfriend in that one? Or is that a different one?
I think that's a different one.
I thought Jaws like turns into a good guy at some point and gets a girlfriend.
Yeah, I don't think it's in Moonraker, but I know exactly what we need to do is we need to flesh out the rest of our Bond series.
Oh, for sure.
That we started last year when we thought that Bond is going to get released in May, and then it got moved to November, and now maybe this Thanksgiving we'll see it. Who knows?
Right. I know.
It is, and maybe it's just a choice by the director, and maybe she felt like it would be important to have her watch this, and that was the favorite. But it's an odd choice. Moonraker is one of those, like, you either love it or hate it.
Right.
So,
one thing about Black Widow in general in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I've been thinking about a lot recently is, obviously I have no idea we would know if she had signed a contract for any other things, that if Scarlett Johansson was actually doing anything in the future. But they've done this thing that Marvel does where they know wisely that they should try to leave some doors open just a little bit, just in case something works out. And I believe they've kind of hinted at some future potential of ScarJo's Black Widow still playing a part of the MCU in some way. Two things that they've done. One was at the end of Endgame, right before Cap goes back in time and he's talking to Hulk, and Hulk says something to the effect of like, when I snap my fingers, I tried to bring her back. I made that a part of it. I tried to bring her back. And obviously, to them, it didn't work. And there's always the potential explanation that, no, she did come back, but she's still on Vormir and she can't get off now, or something, right? Like she came back somewhere else. But then also in the Easter egg of Black Widow, Yelena does the whistle that her and Natasha do like a call and response to during the movie. And so she does the whistle as she's standing over the grave, and the sort of expectation that they're building up is you're going to hear the return whistle, and maybe we'll hear the return whistle and cut to black. Oh, is Black Widow coming back? But then it's Juliette Lewis-Dreyfus blowing her nose, or is she trying to whistle but just can't? Something hilarious.
She's like I'm allergic to the Midwest.
She's blowing her nose. I am so happy that she's a part of the MCU now, because I am a huge Juliette Lewis-Dreyfus fan, and so that they sort of play at the idea that there's this audience expectation that Natasha may come back, and it more than likely is a closed book. It would make sense that it's a closed book, but who knows? I always thought I would love an iteration of the Avengers where Black Widow was the leader, right? She was like the one that had the most experience and was like now going to go into like a tactical field leadership position. But who knows? Who knows where they're going to go with it from here?
I'm very interested, because I think you also have the opportunity to do something with like the Hawkeye series, right? There's nothing that says you can't have flashback pieces that she could be involved with.
I mean, clearly we're going to see Yelena again in the Hawkeye series that's been teased.
Right.
Because she is being told that Barton is the reason for Natasha's death, which means that the story must gotten out there that, he was the one that sacrificed her on Vormir versus her making her own sacrifice.
Right.
So it'll be very interesting to see where that goes. And not to confuse our audience too much, but this is not the only new piece of MCU content that's out there. The series Loki is going on right now, and there's a lot. And just like in WandaVision and in Falcon and Winter Soldier, clearly the MCU is building up to some new thing, but what that thing is exactly is still a mystery, which really excites me because I know the comic history of the leading up to the late 90s. There's so many potential things they could be building up, but Marvel is so good at going, we're going to do something new with that. We're going to kind of reinvent the character. So Taskmaster in Black Widow is sort of a reinvented version of Taskmaster from the comics. The power set is still there, the ability is still there, but the origin story is different, and I think that totally works. Same thing with Hela in Thor Ragnarok. Her Hela is sort of a combination of a few different characters from the Marvel comics, but for the movies, it works. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do next, because I'm guessing.
Well, let's talk about Taskmaster. Taskmaster is sort of the superhuman unstoppable villain that we find out is being controlled by the big bad in Black Widow. And this is the thing that I kind of walked away with Taskmaster. So does Taskmaster just like, is the character such a good mimic? Because at one point it shoots an arrow like Hawkeye does, and then another point it has claws like Black Panther would,
right?
And there were all these moments where I'm like, okay, so is this just sort of like is this the all you can eat buffet of Marvel superheroes?
Okay, so obviously we're already in spoilers territory. So if anyone's still listening, they've already seen the movie or they don't care about the spoilers. In the comic books, Taskmaster's power is he had an innate ability to instantly learn the movements of others just by watching them once. So as a kid, he finds out that he watches an amazing basketball player and suddenly he's amazing at basketball. And I don't know if they've ever retconned that into like a mutant ability in the comics, that's why it's innate or what else. In the movie, it seems like they're saying that because it's Raykov's daughter, and he says, I had to put a computer chip in the back of her brain. It seems like they're saying he has now given her the ability with that computer chip to mimic or instantly learn the movements of anyone that she studies. And so what she's done is she studied the Avengers. So you see her, she's copying Black Panther's moves, Captain America's moves, Hawkeye's moves, Spider-Man's moves. There are clearly some moves she would never be able to, like she can't just mimic Hulk's strength or, Thor's ability to wield Mjolnir, but the more human level characters who are, fist fighting characters, including Black Widow, she can mimic. And so I think that's what they're saying in the movie, is that it's not an innate ability that she has, but that the computer chip that her father put in her skull to save her life is the thing giving her that ability. And you could argue too that it seems like the tech that she's using, at least the visor and sort of the heads up display, also mimics
Tony Stark.
Iron Man, exactly how Tony Stark sort of is able to learn Captain America's moves in Civil War. So there's clearly Stark tech that's being stolen and repurposed. I think that is a vibranium shield that she has. I think it is, which is incredibly difficult to get a hold of, but the big bad effectively has the resources of world governments at his disposal. So getting a hold of enough vibranium to make another shield is probably child's play. And now that Red Guardian has a vibranium shield that he can kind of repurpose for whatever, it's going to be interesting to see if we're going my guess is we're going to see some kind of a crossover between Red Guardian, Captain America, and US Agent, which has me super stoked.
Yeah.
Super stoked.
I also will say this about Taskmaster when it's revealed that it's Raykov's daughter and they take off the helmet and she's supposed to be hideous to look at, right. Like you have to avert your eyes. I didn't actually think that she looked that bad.
I think you're right, and my guess is that's a calculation of the level of, which seems weird because it's fighting and killing going on in the movie, but family friendliness, right?
Sure.
Is it gonna? I remember reading about when they were making Batman Forever, and that they wanted to make sure that Two-Face, while he had a scarred face, wasn't so scary that they couldn't they thought they'd scare kids and they wouldn't be able to sell action figures. And they thought Penguin was too scary in Batman Returns. So I wouldn't be surprised if, you're right. She wasn't you could tell that she was scarred and disfigured on some level, but it wasn't to the level of being. I
kind of wanted them to remove the helmet and she looked like Snoke, right? Like where huge chunks of her skull had been like blown off and things like that, to me, and because there's even like a line about it, be like, yes, she's hard to look at, isn't she? And I look at her and I'm like, no, I've dated girls who easily would lose to this girl in a beauty competition,
right?
And so that's a minor qualm, and you're Tucker, you're probably hitting the nail on the head with we got to make sure that we can still that someone can go as her for Halloween if we really want.
Have you ever watched one of those videos online where they basically tally up the kill count at the hands of like Marvel superheroes, or also like I forget the guys that have that channel, the special effects channel, where they make computer effects, and they did one where they basically added realistic gore and injuries to what would have happened to people in fight scenes in Marvel movies. Because part of the whole superhero genre, for sure, is violence without consequences. You know,
in this movie, so David Harbour's character, when you're introduced to him in modern times, is in prison. He's in kind of like a gulag, I think they would technically call it.
Sure, yeah.
And in it, they, again, spoilers, they cause an avalanche, plus they just straight up use a grenade launcher and take out a guard tower. These guys are supposed to keep the criminals in the prison. You're killing innocent people.
Right.
And at the very end of the movie, I thought the collateral damage from the Red Room, I mean, my God, killed hundreds of people at least, if not thousands.
And I hate to bring it up because I know you do not like Age of Ultron at all, but Ultron was right when he said you're all killers, because Captain America was a product of war, killed plenty of people in war, clearly has killed people. At least agents of Hydra and stuff in the current world. We know about Black Widow. Hawkeye has clearly killed plenty of people. Thor is, I think he says he's 3,000 years old, and he's been in plenty of battles, killing people left and right. Even boasts that the realms of hell are filled with the screams of Hulk's victims. Of course, Hulk has killed plenty of people, caused mayhem and destruction. Tony Stark was an arms dealer and has killed plenty of people. So, like, with the exception of Spider-Man, all of these Marvel superheroes, well, and I don't know if Black Panther has really killed people. We don't really get the sense necessarily that he has, except that he probably has. Well, I think he kind of does, and when he's fighting those guys in the beginning of Black Panther who are, I think, poaching in the jungle or something like that. But beyond that, yeah, they're all they've killed so many people. All of their ledgers are dripping with blood.
And so, and I agree that, like, at one point, like when they talk about like the Sokovia Accord and stuff like that, it's because there are a lot of innocent people who've just died. And it's not even in like the, hey, we're helping protect the world. Like the events of what happened in New York City, like in the first Avengers movie, they did their best to stop it. Right. But it wasn't their fault that this was taking place. When a gigantic base from the sky falls and like crushes your farm and kills like your 3 kids, and you're the only one who survived because you're out getting cigarettes. Like, how do you justify that? And it also makes me think this. So does it create future villains in a way? Like, kind of in the way that Vulture is created more or less because of the events of the Avengers, right?
Right. As is Ultron. Yeah. As is I mean, that's basically, that is the core argument being bandied about in Civil War, is what Vision talks about, where he says our very strength invites conflict. It's how they get the villain in Civil War, right? Like you just said, he's a Sokovian and he loses his family to the Ultron attack. And that even when the Avengers are doing something that attempts to be good and they don't intentionally hurt people, they can still escalate situations in a way that can cause untold damage, like Scarlet Witch does on accident when they're at the beginning of Civil War. And so, yeah, Marvel has done this amazing job of trying to grapple with placing their heroes, even though their heroes are in this like fantastical world that transcends time and space, that they still have to deal with the human fallout of being superpowered nuclear weapons walking around. So it kind of makes you go, maybe, William Hurt's character Thunderbolt Ross isn't totally wrong. He's wrong in a lot of ways because he just wants to be in power too. But
okay, let's talk about William Hurt for a second. Yeah. He was underutilized in this movie.
I agree, JJ. We agree about this.
Thank God.
Yes.
It almost is like, what's even the point of having him suit up for this movie? It could have been done over like a phone call.
Right. He really kind of becomes just more of the connective tissue between Civil War and this, where they're like, well, we want to connect these things a little bit more. So he's here. But yeah, you're right. Like, it would have been great if he was one of the big bads that she was dealing with the whole time. Right. Like, if it was, if she's running from him the whole time as well.
Right. Like, and I would also love the fact that, like, if he almost is the reason that, like, it stops her from her goal, right? Like, the type of thing where, she's just about to, like, break into this thing, and all of a sudden she's surrounded by agents, and he's actually stopping her from being able to kill off Rakoff. And so, because to me, the one thing that we don't get from her in this is this sense of, okay, so my actions in this movie are going to have either consequences, good or bad. Right. And to me, like, that's what I would have loved to have seen is, if Thunderbolt was like you murdered that man, you caused this huge thing. He's like, you're mine now. Your ass is grass.
Right. Well, and I do have a criticism of the movie besides what you're saying, the William Hurt, but it ties into it. I think if I could remove one scene from the movie, it's when we see her with the shortcut blonde hair and she's wearing the vest and she's about to leave. I actually think that felt to me almost forcefully inserted as unnecessary connective tissue, because what they have her doing right is she's won the day, and Thunderbolt Ross and the authorities are pulling up, and so she's about to get arrested. And then it cuts from there to the scene with her in the wig. But if anything, what I thought was about to happen was, oh, okay, so she gets arrested and she's one of the people on the raft that gets broken out by Captain America. And that's how she joins him, is that, oh, she'll just turn herself in now because she got done what she wanted to do. And now she's going to go face the music. And that then the connective is just that. But then what happens is we find out, oh, no, we just don't find out what happened to her with Thunderbolt. But when she's free, she still has to go help break those guys out. So then it's like, well, what happened then? It feels like there's this massive gap when you place that scene with her in the really bad blonde wig. It looked like a really bad blonde wig versus how it looked in the wigage they used on her in Infinity War. But yeah, so I thought that scene of her meeting the guy, getting the Quinjet, don't need it. It actually just created more confusion, if anything, where it would have been much cleaner if it's just like, yep, she turned herself in, because then it connects the story that Cap broke her out as well as everyone else.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that statement, Tucker. So luckily we find ourselves on the same page at least once.
Excellent.
I also want to just throw this out there that there were a couple of things that they set up that I never got payoff for, and I don't know what the payoff would be. Number one, the vest. They keep saying like lots of pockets in the vest.
Right.
I wanted at one point for like one of the pockets to pay off. Like, why are you talking about them so much? But clearly, like, they just are talking about, it's a fun line, and I think people will quote it, but I wanted it to have a payoff. I don't know why, but I wanted the pigs to do something as well.
Yeah. Obviously with the vest, the payoff is merely just that's the vest that Widow is wearing in Infinity War.
Right.
So they just give an explanation that's really unnecessary to it, to that. It's fine. Like, I like that detail, but you're right. Like, they keep talking about the pockets being something. It feels like a setup for something that's going to happen later on in the movie. And yeah, the pigs seem they're just an explanation for the mind control effect.
Well, and she keeps using the term "go home where it's safe." Go home where it's safe.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so if you're going to use a terminology like that, like, why am I not getting? Why is there not some kind of payoff there? Like, like, if that's like if that's where, like, they have to open a safe and that's the key, like, phrase or some junk like that,
Right.
And maybe this is me just looking at it being like, I took a screenwriting class in college. It was like, don't waste any words, but I am just fine with where we ended up with it. Don't get me wrong at all.
Yeah. But I, and you know this about me, I am a whore for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really am. I am such a super fan. I am someone who admittedly will wear rose-colored glasses, so it's going to be difficult to get a negative review out of me when it comes to the MCU, just because I'm such a fan. I love the playground of it. But even with or without rose-colored glasses, Black Widow, I think, is a thumbs up from me to steal Siskel and Ebert's shtick. I'd say go see it ASAP. And now, JJ, so you've seen it once in the theater. Are you just going to wait now for it to open up to Disney Plus, or are you going to watch it again and pay the $30?
I'm actually considering going back to the theaters today to go see it a second time.
Okay.
Because now I got the Jones for some popcorn and pop. I will say this. The candy situation at our local movie theaters is on point right now.
Oh, good.
There was a supply shortage that caused my usual go-to candy to be out of stock. So it's caused me to venture out of my comfort zone, and thank God it did, because oh boy, I forgot how good Reese's Pieces are.
Okay, so let's do what's your new combo then? What do you recommend people hit up?
Okay, so I don't know why this is such a secret, but I've mentioned it before. I will get Junior Mints and then pour them into my popcorn halfway, like when I'm half done with the popcorn. And then I've got a chocolatey, minty, salty snack that I can have, which I really like. I also really like Reese's Pieces. They're really good. They've got some like a gummy option. I think it's Welch's fruit snacks.
Gummies. Huh?
Yeah, that are really good, really solid stuff.
I'm thinking of in terms of putting in your popcorn. My bad. So not gummies in the popcorn.
Not gummies in the popcorn. But I've seen people do that though.
Monsters.
Yeah. Right. And then and Skittles. I was like, oh God, I want something that's like sweet. I'll get Skittles. Oh my God, I forgot how good Skittles are.
They're great, but I don't like how tight my jaw gets after it.
Because they're kind of hard to get into.
Well, they're meant to be chewy, and it's delicious. I like a couple of Skittles. I like a little handful of Skittles, but I have done the route where I decided, I'm gonna murder this bag of Skittles right here. And I always regret the jaw fatigue that sets in after a little bit.
Do you want a pro tip? It's not going to completely fix it, but I'll give you a pro tip for it.
Yeah.
Put those things in your pocket for a while. Got to get them, or like when you sit down, like shove them right underneath your crotch
to warm them up. So they're
let them warm up. And if you're getting Skittles outside of the movie theater, throw them right on your dashboard, man.
Okay, so what I'll do is
let them bake in the sun.
Next date I go on and I take a lady to a movie and I get some Skittles. I'm like, I'm just hold on one second. I'm gonna sit on these for a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? And she's like, you're the one. I also want to throw this pro tip out there. When you get a large popcorn, there's a lot of room that the salt just can't reach. Popcorn, by its nature, is a great magnet for salt. And so if you salt the top part of your popcorn, it's never going to get down to the bottom. I have started just bringing my own salt to the movie theater.
No, really?
Yeah, I went to the grocery store and I got the simple like Morton's popcorn salt, because I don't like, if you try and give me fully granulated salt, I need the ultra fine popcorn salt. That's what I need. Yeah. It's almost like a dust.
Yeah.
And so I bring my own. So halfway through the movie, I can tap, 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 and I'm good to go.
Do you finish your bags
of popcorn?
Yeah.
Well, they're buckets now at where I see movies.
Do you finish your buckets?
Yeah, I usually do.
Okay. I don't think I've ever finished a bucket or a bag at a movie on my own. I can't remember the time I have, but I'm also someone who likes buttery popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can maybe fill you up a bit faster.
It really does. Well,
sticks to the ribs.
There's the grease quotient in there.
Yeah.
You gotta take that. Maybe that's why you're not able to make it through a whole movie, is you're lubing up your insides.
Could be. I mean, I think it's the 2-gallon Pepsi that I chug down in the previews that take 20 minutes to get through. I think it's that. But I bet the popcorn does something.
Hey, by the way, a little bit of personal life info update. I was recently inducted into the North Dakota Film Society.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. And so if you want to go back and listen to our interview with Scotty Nolan about that, you'll find out about the things that are going to go on in my life and what I'm expected to do now that I'm part of this, elite group of movie watchers.
I would like what are you expected to do now? What benefits does this give you?
Well, they've got a bunch of the goal is that they want to do like a bunch of events and stuff like that, right? So with their events, they want to do things like, have screenings in places even outside of Fargo where they can do stuff with Q&As afterwards, curate some movie experiences. They're screeners and, blogs, and then you get to vote for like the North Dakota's, top movies of the year and things like that. One of the things that I'd like to do with it is I'd like to kind of, help with that curation process of some events and some fun stuff.
Sweet.
I'd love to see a world where we try and bring in some people who, are filmmakers to talk about what they're doing. I'd also like to see the North Dakota Film Society lobby the state to get more production happening here. I thought about this morning. Okay, so the Canadian border is still closed to non-essential travel, essentially, right?
Okay.
One of the things that Canada seems to have deemed essential is film production. So like they're still allowing like US actors and actresses to go up and film stuff there. This would have been a prime time for us to essentially create incentives before the border opened up to anybody to say like, no, because things are back in production, keep your production in the United States.
Right.
But that didn't happen. So what are we going to do?
It's one of those things where I feel like, because, obviously when a state, I don't know much about this topic, so I'll need an education, but when a state is looking at, how would we entice production companies here? Obviously they do monetary things, and they also try to point out the sort of natural scenery. And granted, in North Dakota, we've got some, but not at the level that I think a lot of places look for, even places that are looking for big cities. But what we could do is, because of just the affordable cost of even living and operating out of here, there's so many production houses and studios that could just relocate a lot of their workforce to here, because they're not shooting location specific, right? They're shooting interiors of things that they're building. And so if they're having to construct stuff and everything else like that, you'd think that we'll go to a state where it's cheap to do those things.
Yeah, to me, it's if your state, here's the thing. So like, let's say you offered a huge tax incentive for filming to take place in North Dakota, and you're able to offer up some other elements of it that, that work out well. It's not like you're losing money. It's not like you're saying, okay, oil companies, we're only going to charge a 10% tax rather than 20% tax. This industry doesn't exist in North Dakota already. So any dollars it brings in are dollars above anything that we previously had.
Sure.
So, and it's hard to make that argument, though, to people who are like, what do you mean making a movie? But like, they could be filming television programs here. They could be filming commercials here. There's a lot that could be done that just isn't being done.
Yeah, I mean, they could be buying lumber locally for their sets. They could be buying food locally. They could be hiring local workforce.
They could be filling local hotels. They could be eating at our restaurants. Yep. They could be renting, equipment. There's just a ton. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like little pop-up businesses movies where it's like a group of people are going to come together for a period of time and work really hard on something and then disperse. So it's almost like a tourism thing, right? Or like a convention thing. Like you got this group of people coming in, but for way longer than a convention does. Do you like the money that comes in from a convention, or like when, a wrestling state tournament happens and you get all these people together? Well, imagine that group of people getting together, but sticking together for 3 to 6 months.
Wouldn't that be the bee's knees?
That'd be fantastic. Get on it, legislatures.
Yeah, let's film the next Marvel movie up here.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what's the next Marvel movie that comes out? Is the next one Eternals?
I think so. Yes, and obviously we've got, as of this recording, we have the last episode of Loki coming up here on Wednesday, which would be really, really interesting to see, because that'll open up a lot of that too. But there's Eternals. I know Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is filming. Spider-Man is filming right now.
That comes out this. Okay, so let me. I'm sorry. Look, I'm looking at the release date. Here we go. So Black Widow. The next one is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Then we get Eternals. Then we get Spider-Man No Way Home. Which, by the way, when are we going to see a trailer for that?
Well, there's so much rumor about there's so much hidden right now about what that would entail because its storyline connects with Doctor Strange Multiverse plus both Loki and WandaVision. They're all building towards this particular story. So I think the reason we haven't is because there's probably too many spoilers. One of the things that we do know is that we're going to be seeing previous actors from other Spider-Man movies appearing, like Alfred Molina as Doc Ock is coming back. Jamie Foxx is coming back to play Electro. And there's rumors that we might get both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield as their Spider-Man because it's a multiverse framed storyline. So who knows, man? And of course, it complicates everything extra because it's a joint venture between Sony and Marvel, or Sony and Disney. And of course, Sony still has the Venom movie, Let There Be Carnage, that's coming out at some point.
And their Morbius movie.
Which who gives a shit about that?
Yeah,
movie?
right. Sorry, Jared Leto.
Yeah, no one gives two shits about Morbius, even Spider-Man fans. Anyways, we could go on forever about that.
Just for like an idea. So between now and the end of the year, we're gonna get 3 more Marvel movies, and then between March and November of next year, we're gonna get 4 Marvel movies.
Put it into my veins.
Yeah, right. So with it, within a year and a year and a half, we're gonna have 8 Marvel movies that hit theaters, including one that I am really looking forward to, which is Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I can't wait. It is such a good time to be alive as a Marvel fan. I'm just so happy, like all the time, just all the time.
And just so I know when it's Morbius has been pushed to 2022.
Oh shoot!
So sorry, Tucker. You're gonna have to wait a little bit longer for Morbius.
All right, whatever.
All right. Hey, listen, Tucker. Thanks for the discussion. Even though we don't agree on things, we can agree that movies are awesome.
I feel like we agreed on most things actually in this episode. We don't agree on Ray Winstone, and I think we'll just have to be okay with that.
Yeah, we didn't even get into this, but Hollywood has like a weird thing where why aren't we trying to get Russian actors into actual Russian parts in some movies? Is there still like a stigma of like, no, you don't do business with the Ruskies?
Who knows? I have no idea.
Yeah,
good question.
We'll find out for sure. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. I think it's so weird that no one's ever commented on the fact that Black Widow and Spider-Man are together, and a Black Widow is a type of a spider. Come on, guys.